Welcome to what must be the ultimate collection of BMW M3s.
In this series, we've gathered together the cars that represent the zenith from each generation of BMW M3, and we've been taking a closer look at each iteration in chronological order.
Finally, in our series, we've gone all the way from E30 through E36, E46, E90. Now we get to the F80 M3 CS. Here we are then, bang up to date in the latest M3 CS. Let's deal with the fact first that there is the M4 GTS. Now I know that exists, and really that's arguably the proper successor to the M3 GTS from the E90 generation, but it's an M3 test, isn't it? So we thought we'd have this, and we haven't driven this before. So it's rather nice keeping it all M3s, I think.
The CS, or Club Sport, is superficially a slightly curious halfway house between competition pack and full-blown GTS. A sort of madras of the range, if you will, and as we'll see, the end result is rather tasty. Anyway, for your circa £90,000 you get 454 brake horsepower, 442 pounds-foot of torque, a 25% lighter carbon bonnet, a 30% lighter dash, yes really, Cup 2 tyres, smaller 19-inch front wheels, a recalibration of the ESP and the Active M differential, a top speed limited to 173 miles an hour, and a 0 to 62 mile an hour time of 3.9 seconds. It is being produced in a limited edition run of 1,200 units, making it precisely half as rare as an E30 Sport Evo.
The first things you notice when you get into this, and it's lovely actually, having driven all this car's predecessors before it, in some ways the leap from the E92 GTS into this is a bit like from the E30 into the E36, just in terms of size. This instantly feels like a much bigger car. Having said that, seating position is absolutely fantastic. These M Sport seats really are very, very good indeed. Now we've obviously lost a couple of cylinders, but whilst we've only got 10 brake horsepower more than that GTS, we've got 118 pounds-foot of torque more, which is ample in the wet. We're on cup rubber for this CS as well, so back off the Pirellis and onto the Michelins again. It's a really, really good tyre.
One other feature that this car is equipped with is a decent set of brakes. M3s, in fact M cars in general, have been notorious over the years for not having adequate stoppers, hence CSLs like the one in this group being regularly upgraded from the standard items that appear to be made from some form of gooey cheese to something more appropriate from AP racing. But hurrah! For this latest generation you can spec for £6,250 carbon ceramic brakes straight from the factory, and very, very good they are too, with a fantastically firm feel underfoot. Plus, just as importantly obviously, you get gold calipers glinting behind the alloys like expensive dental work. Now you might think that the much larger F80 would absolutely have to have better brakes given how much more it is bound to weigh, but interestingly, although the F80 M3 feels like a much bigger car than those of the E90 era, the weight has hardly increased at all. If we look at the figures for this CS alongside a previous generation CRT, which was the saloon version of the GTS and therefore probably the fairest comparison, you'll notice that at 1585 kilos, the current car is only 5 bags of sugar heavier.
You can still see lots of little traits from the old cars as well in this one. You notice things like we've still got analog dials in this, which I really like, and we've got an M button like the last two generations we looked at, except we've now got two. We've got M1 and M2 because progress, obviously. If one M button is good, then surely two must be better. So the fact that this S55 motor is turbocharged, twin turbos on this motor, has it spoilt the M3? Can you still feel what an extreme M3 should be like in this latest generation? Yes, the latest F80 generation of M3 has been something that, to be honest, I certainly didn't fall in love with it to start with. It felt much too heavy, and then the rear suspension was much too pogo-y, certainly on the road, and it was really difficult to control all the extra torque. But subtly over time they've improved it, and with this CS you can feel all that come together. The way this car now sits into its rear suspension means it's much more easily controlled over the limit when those rear wheels do start to spin up, you feel like you've got more time. It's not the intimidating experience it was before. It can actually utilise a lot of its torque. This motor now also sounds much better as well. It does sound good, doesn't it? Perhaps the biggest thing for me though is the chassis balance. It's still really, really good fun, and as soon as you get into this car out on the road, it feels so keen at the front end, and yet just still really nicely balanced. It's not the intimidating car that it was initially. On paper, this CS might not look wildly different to the competition pack that you can obviously spec for a standard M3, and is fantastic value. This is only 10 kilos lighter, but this has got slightly smaller, inch smaller in diameter front wheels, which certainly can add up to a bit of difference. They've also retuned the ESP and the M differential, and you shouldn't underestimate the difference that retuning a differential can make in terms of the way that the car can get into the corners. Although this is not as extreme as the GTS or the CSL, and of course it's not meant to be, because as we've mentioned there's the M4 GTS. In some ways this feels like a bit of a return back to the 30, which wasn't totally stripped out. As soon as you turn in, I love the fact that so you can use the torque in a way that you never could in the earlier cars. Certainly, yes, the V8 in the wet, obviously it had more than enough torque to spin on the rears, but there, that wasn't above 4,000 RPM. It's a different character. Still the same, still really enjoyable.
I was a little worried that, surrounded by its most illustrious forebears, this F80 M3 CS might feel a little underwhelming, even a touch treacherous given its turbochargers. Thankfully, it doesn't. This is a car that can hold its carbon bonnet high and confidently share track space with those that have gone before.
For all its extra size, for all its turbocharging power, it is very much still a BMW M3. That's wonderful.